Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Tyr, a truly fascinating figure from the Forgotten Realms. We'll be exploring excerpts from the Forgotten Realms wiki, focusing on Tyr himself and the Triad, a powerful alliance of deities that he leads. You might already know Tyr from Norse mythology, but in the Forgotten Realms, his story takes some unexpected twists and turns, so get ready to uncover the complexities of divine justice, alliances, and maybe even some betrayal along the way.
It is fascinating how a deity can be both familiar and completely unique at the same time. Tyr, as you mentioned, exists in Norse mythology, but in the Forgotten Realms, he shifted from a god of war to a god of justice.
It's like he traded in his battle axe for a gavel. But even with this new focus on justice, he's still known by some pretty intense titles. The Maimed God, the Even-Handed, Grimjaws, not exactly what you'd expect from a champion of law and order, right?
Well, consider the irony of the title, even-handed, considering he's missing a hand. It's a bit of dark humor woven into his character. But these titles also hint at the complexities of his journey. He's not just a symbol of unwavering law. He's a god who has experienced loss, sacrifice, and even punishment.
Okay, so before we dive into his story, let's get a visual. How is Tyr described in the wiki?
Imagine a noble warrior, powerfully built, with a flowing beard. That sounds pretty standard for a god.
All right.
But here's where it gets interesting. He's either blind or constantly wears a bloody bandage over his eyes, and he's missing his right hand. He doesn't even try to hide the stump.
Whoa, that's a powerful image. It definitely makes you think about the sacrifices that come with upholding justice. What do you make of those visual details?
They are incredibly symbolic. I think the blind or bandaged eyes could represent blind justice, the idea that judgment should be impartial, not swayed by appearances. And the missing hand, that speaks to the personal cost of fighting for what's right, the sacrifices one might have to make.
Yeah. It definitely adds a layer of depth to his character. So beyond the striking visuals, what's Tyr like personality-wise?
Tyr is completely dedicated to upholding law and good, punishing those who break oaths and betray trust. He despises lies and those who profit from deceit. He's also incredibly brave and honorable, always striving to make the world a better place.
He sounds like the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner, all rolled into one. And speaking of judging, the wiki says he has some pretty incredible powers, like being able to instantly spot thieves and see invisible things. He even knows if you're lying.
Yes, those powers are directly related to his role as a god of justice. Imagine trying to get away with anything when Tyr's around. He's also immune to illusions and fear magic, so he can't be tricked or manipulated easily. He's basically the ultimate lie detector.
Makes you wonder if polygraph tests were inspired by Tyr.
Okay.
So we've got this powerful, justice-driven god with some serious abilities. But he's not a lone wolf, is he? Tell us about the Triad.
This is where it gets even more interesting. The Triad is an alliance between Tyr, Ilmith the god of suffering and compassion, and Torm, the god of duty. It might seem like a strange mix at first. Justice, suffering, and duty.
It's not your typical superhero team-up. What holds this alliance together?
Think of it this way. True justice requires a balance of those very elements. Tyr provides the framework of law and justice, setting the standards. Ilmater reminds them of the importance of compassion and understanding, bringing empathy to the table. And Torm, he embodies the unwavering commitment to upholding those principles, ensuring action follows words.
I'm starting to see how they complement each other. They're like a divine justice league, each bringing their unique strengths to the fight for good. But how did this alliance come to be? Did they just bump into each other on the celestial planes and decide to form a team?
Their formation story is pretty epic, actually. It involves an event called the Procession of Justice, which marked Tyr's dramatic entrance into Farunian history. Imagine this. Tyr, leading a host of archons, basically powerful beings of law and order, arrives in Toriel with a mission to purge chaos from the remnants of a fallen empire. This event cemented Tyr's commitment to justice in this realm and drew Ilmater and Torm to his cause, eventually leading to the formation of the Triad.
It wasn't a casual team-up. It was forged in the fires, a major battle against chaos. It makes you wonder what kind of chaos they faced that required this level of divine intervention. But speaking of challenges, let's talk about how Tyr lost his hand. The wiki mentions it was Kazif the Chaos Hound. Care to elaborate on that?
Kazif.
What?
A primordial beast of pure chaos and destruction. The story of how Tyr lost his hand to this creature is a wild one, and it highlights his unwavering commitment to justice, even at a great personal cost.
All right, spill the celestial tea. What happened between Tyr and this Chaos Hound?
It all started when a group of gods, including Tyr, decided they needed to stop Kazif once and for all. They tracked him down and offered him a deal. If he could escape from chains forged by Gond, the god of craft, they would lift the ban placed on him by the Circle of Greater Powers.
Sounds like a risky proposition. I have a feeling this is where Tyr's hand comes into play.
You're catching on. As cunning as he is chaotic, Kezef added a condition to the deal. He insisted that, for the challenge, to be fair, Tyr had to put his right hand in Kezef's mouth. It was a test of Tyr's honor and willingness to put himself at risk for the greater good.
Wow, talk about a high-stakes bet. What did Tyr do?
He did what he believed was just and honorable. He put his hand in Kezef's mouth, trusting in the fairness of the challenge. Unfortunately, Kezef, being a preacher of chaos, wasn't exactly known for playing by the rules.
So Kezef bit his hand off.
He did, ultimately. Kezef was bound by Gond's chains, but not before taking Tyr's hand as a brutal trophy.
That's intense. It really shows Tyr's unwavering dedication to his principles, even when faced with unimaginable risk. But this wasn't the end of Tyr's challenges, was it? The wiki mentions something called the Time of Troubles, and it sounds like things took a turn for the worse for him.
The Time of Troubles was a period of divine upheaval in the Forgotten Realms, and it's where we see the God of Justice facing, well, injustice.
Wait, are you saying the God of Justice was punished? That's some serious cosmic irony. What happened?
Lord Avo, the over-god of Toriel, punished Tyr. And the reasons are pretty ironic, considering Tyr's role. He was blinded for failing to notice the theft of the Tablets of Fate, which were incredibly powerful artifacts, and for questioning the justice of Avio's actions during the Time of Troubles.
So the God of Justice is punished for, essentially, seeking justice. That's heavy stuff. How did Tyr Howard cope with being blinded, especially considering his role is all about seeing the truth and upholding the law?
It was a devastating blow, both physically and emotionally. But he had Ilmater by his side. Remember, Ilmater is the god of suffering and compassion. He helped Tyr adapt to his blindness, teaching him to rely on his other senses and inner strength.
It's amazing how, even in his darkest moments, Tyr had his friends to support him. But it seems like his troubles didn't end there. The wiki mentions a spell plague and something about a downfall. What happened next?
This is where things take a truly tragic turn for Tyr, and it involves a character you might be familiar with, Cyric, the god of lies and strife. The spell plague was a magical catastrophe that ripped through the Forgotten Realms, and in the chaos that followed, Cyric saw an opportunity to exploit Tyr's weakened state and manipulate his unwavering sense of justice.
Oh, this doesn't sound good. Cyric is not exactly known for his honesty and good intentions. What did he do?
Cyric tricked Tyr into believing that Helm, the god of guardians, was having an affair with Tamora, the goddess Tyr was courting.
A divine love triangle. That's juicy even for the gods, but why would Cyric care about Tyr's love life?
Cyric thrives on chaos and discord. He wanted to pit two powerful deities against each other, knowing that Tyr, with his strong sense of justice, would feel compelled to confront Helm.
So, did they have some kind of godly showdown?
Yes, they did. Tyr, believing he was defending his honor and righting a wrong, challenged Helm to a duel. And tragically, Helm was killed.
Oh no. What happened to Tyr after Helm's death?
The guilt and grief were overwhelming. He felt responsible for Helm's death and the chaos that ensued, combined with the manipulation he'd endured. It led to a complete breakdown. Tyr abdicated his godhood, gave his power to Torm, and instructed his followers to follow Torm from that point on. It was a truly tragic fall from grace for a god who had once been a symbol of justice and strength.
Wow. From a champion of justice to a broken god who gives up everything. It's hard to imagine the weight of that burden. What happened to Tyr after he stepped down from his role?
He didn't just fade away. In a final act of heroism, he died defending the celestial planes from a demonic invasion. He went out fighting. A true hero to the very end.
That's incredibly powerful, even in his darkest hour. He stayed true to his nature. But wait, the wiki mentions something about a resurrection. Tell me there's hope for Tyr.
There might be. The sources indicate that Tyr was somehow resurrected. During an event known as the Second Sundering, it seems even death couldn't keep the god of justice down for good.
This is just the beginning of our deep dive into Tyr. We've covered his origin story, his triumphs, his tragedies, and now shocking return. But there's so much more to explore. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the Triad, analyze the potential impact of Tyr's return, and try to unravel the mysteries surrounding this complex and compelling god.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Tyr. Before we get into the juicy details of his return, I want to circle back to the Triad. It's not every day you see a god of justice teaming up with the god of suffering and the god of duty. Right? It's a fascinating study in how different, seemingly contradictory aspects of morality can actually work together. You have Tor, the staunch upholder of law and justice, providing the framework and setting the standards. Then there's Ilmater, embodying compassion and endurance in the face of pain, reminding us that justice shouldn't be cold and heartless. And finally, you have Torm, the embodiment of duty and loyalty, making sure those principles translate into real action.
So they're not just sitting around in a celestial courtroom debating ethics. They're actively working together to bring balance to the realms. It really makes you think about how those concepts, justice, compassion, and duty, play out in our own world, doesn't it? Are they always in harmony, or do they sometimes clash?
That's a question worth pondering, for
Yeah.
sure. But back to the Triad. Their dynamic raises an interesting question. What happens now that Tor is back? He did, after all, abdicate his godhood and pass the torch to Torm.
Talk about an awkward family reunion. Imagine coming back from the dead, only to find your former protege is now running the show. Do you think Tor will want his old job back?
It's a real head-scratcher. The sources don't give us any clear answers, but the possibilities are endless. Will Tyr try to reclaim his leadership position? Will Torm willingly step aside? Or will there be tension? Maybe even conflict within the Triad?
And don't forget Ilmater. He's got his own history with the Triad, having left for a while after Helm's death, before eventually rejoining with Torm and Bahamut, who kind of filled in for Tyr. Where does his loyalty lie now?
It's a divine soap opera waiting to unfold. I'm especially curious to see how Tyr's return will affect his relationship with Torm. Remember, Torm was incredibly devoted to Tyr, even referring to himself as Tyr's good right hand. That's got to be a bit awkward now, considering Tyr, well, doesn't have a right hand anymore.
I can picture Torm being both thrilled and apprehensive, like, yay, my mentor is back. But also, what does this mean for me? Talk about mixed emotions.
And then you have Bahamut, the dragon god of justice, who stepped in when Tyr abdicated. Will he willingly give up that role? Could there be a power struggle? Remember, we're talking about gods here. Egos and power dynamics are definitely at play.
It's like watching a cosmic game of musical chairs, with the fate of justice hanging in the balance. But beyond the drama of the Triad, Tyr's return has to have massive implications for the entire Forgotten Realms. Right, it's not every day a god comes back from the dead.
Absolutely. His presence, absence, has always had a major impact on the balance of power and the very concept of justice in the realms.
So what are we thinking? Will he come back with a vengeance, determined to right all the wrongs that happened while he was gone? Will he be even more committed to upholding the law, maybe taking a stricter approach than before?
Or could his experiences have changed him? He was punished by Lord Ao for questioning Ao's sense of justice, and he died a hero defending the celestial planes. Those events had to have left a mark. Perhaps he'll return with a more nuanced, even more compassionate understanding of justice.
Maybe he'll be less about punishment and more about rehabilitation, focusing on restoring balance and understanding, rather than simply doling out judgment.
It's a fascinating idea. Instead of being the god who punishes wrongdoing, perhaps he'll become the god who helps people find redemption, guiding them back towards the path of justice.
It would be a truly inspiring turn of events, wouldn't it? A testament to the transformative power of suffering and sacrifice. But let's not forget about Cyric, the god of lies who manipulated Tyr into the duel that led to Helm's death and ultimately to Tyr's downfall.
Ah, yes, Cyric, the master manipulator, always lurking in the shadows, sowing chaos. I can't imagine Tyr just letting that slide, especially now that he's back.
Exactly. Tyr might be all about justice and forgiveness, but there's got to be a limit. How do you think he'll handle Cyric? Will he seek revenge?
It's a real dilemma, isn't it? On one hand, Cyric's actions led to immense suffering and chaos, and justice demands that he be held accountable. But on the other hand, becoming consumed by vengeance could turn Tyr into something he's always fought against. He might even become more like Cyric himself.
So how do you reconcile the need for justice with the danger of succumbing to vengeance? It's a question that has plagued philosophers and theologians for centuries, and now it's playing out on a cosmic scale with these gods.
Perhaps Tyr will find a way to balance those opposing forces. He might seek to bring Cyric to justice without sacrificing his own principles, proving that, even in the face of immense betrayal, it's possible to uphold one's ideals.
That would be a powerful message, wouldn't it? Showing that justice can triumph, even over the darkest of manipulations. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. There's still so much we don't know about Tyr's return and its ramifications.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? We're on the edge of a new chapter in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
And the possibilities are endless.
This deep dive has only just begun. Join us for part 3, where we'll explore fan theories, speculate on the potential impact of Tyr's return, and try to predict what the future holds for the god of justice.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Tyr. We've covered his origins, his fall from grace, his heroic sacrifice, and now his unexpected return. It's safe to say his story is one wild ride, What intrigues me most is that we're witnessing the rebirth of a god, not just his return to life. He's stepping back into a world vastly changed by the spell plague, and all the events that followed it makes you wonder what kind of impact he'll have on this new era of the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, it's like he's been given a second chance, but the playing field has completely shifted. Will he be a force for stability, trying to restore the old order, or will his experiences lead him down a new path entirely?
It's like the Forgotten Realms writers have given us a blank slate, inviting us to imagine the possibilities. And speaking of possibilities, the fan theories surrounding Tyr's return are running wild.
Okay, let's dive into the speculation. What are some of the most popular theories you've come across?
One theory that's gaining traction is that Tyr might return with a more radical approach to justice. Remember, he was punished by Lord Io for questioning Aro's sense of justice during the time of troubles that experience could have led him to believe that the old ways of upholding law and order are no longer effective.
So instead of just being the god of justice, he might become a revolutionary, challenging the very foundations of divine authority. Tyr leading a rebellion against the established order. Now that's a story I'd love to read.
It's a compelling image, isn't it? The fallen hero, who returns not to restore the old world, but to forge a new one based on a more radical vision of justice.
It would certainly shake things up, but are there any theories that suggest a less well-revolutionary approach?
Some believe his experiences might have led him in the opposite direction toward a more introspective, even pacifistic approach.
A pacifist god of justice? That seems counterintuitive. How can you uphold justice without, fighting for it?
Think about it this way. Tyr has witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of conflict. He's lost his hand, his sight, his godhood, and ultimately his life, all in the pursuit of justice. Perhaps these experiences have taught him that true justice can't be achieved solely through force or punishment.
So instead of wielding a warhammer, he might be wielding diplomacy, reconciliation, and understanding, focusing on healing the rifts that have divided the realms rather than dickening them.
Exactly. He could become a symbol of unity and forgiveness, inspiring others to seek justice through compassion and understanding rather than retribution. It's a different kind of power, but no less potent.
It makes you wonder what that would look like in practice. Would he establish courts of mediation, travel the realms, preaching peace, and understanding it opens up so many fascinating possibilities.
And that's what makes this whole discussion so engaging. We're not just talking about a character's return, we're talking about the evolution of an idea. The concept of justice is being re-examined, redefined through the lens of Tyr's experiences.
It's almost like the Forgotten Realms is inviting us, the readers and fans, to participate in this evolution, to grapple with those complex questions about what justice truly means in a world that is constantly changing.
And those questions are relevant not just in a fantasy world like the Forgotten Realms, but in our own world as well.
It's true. The struggle to define justice, to find a balance between accountability and compassion, is something we grapple with every day. Okay, time for some bold predictions. What do you think Tyr's return will mean for the Forgotten Realms? Give us your best guess.
If I were to look into my crystal ball,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say Tyr's return will act as a catalyst for significant change. He's not just a god, he's a symbol. And his return, especially given the circumstances of his death and resurrection, is bound to shake things up. He might challenge the existing power structures, inspire new movements, or even spark conflicts as different factions interpret his message in their own way. One thing's for certain, the Forgotten Realms will never be the same with Tyr back in play.
Well said. It sounds like we're on the cusp of a new era in the Forgotten Realms, and I, for one, am excited to see what unfolds. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Tyr, the god of justice, whose story continues to captivate and inspire. Keep an eye on those Forgotten Realms wiki pages because this tale is far from over.